So Dr. Praveen Mohan is a world explorer, writer, researcher of ancient mysteries. Has appeared on several TV programs, including Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, Ren TV in Russia, Thailand PBS, and various Indian television shows. So, unlike Western institutions and their echo chamber of experts, Praveen's powerful voice takes ancient tales and the people who told them seriously. He has a following of 8 million across various social media platforms. Known for his boots on the ground investigative style, Praveen Mohan has uncovered suppressed technology hidden within ancient sites. He has documented more than 100 optical illusions carved into temples in India and Southeast Asia. Renowned for his meticulous documentation of ancient temples and their hidden scientific details, he was honored with the Spiritual Scientist Award by Andhra University in 2024. So title of his talk today will be The Cosmic Blueprint of Life. You can share your screen. I can confirm if it's all good. Then we can start with the presentation. Do you hear me still, or?
All right, so I hope, I'm sorry guys, I apologize for not coming there physically because of a few issues. So we have to do this over Zoom. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I hope, this presentation reaches some good audience. My name is Praveen Mohan. For those of you who don't know, my name is Praveen Mohan. I do a lot of research centered around ancient structures. I have traveled around the world, researched a lot of sites, including Peru, Mexico, Americas, but I mostly focus on temples of India, and off late we have been focusing on temples of Thailand. And I've been doing this for more than a decade now, going boots on the style and exploring all these ancient structures. And one of the things that has interested me is the idea that a particular number appears over and over again in ancient temples, in ancient texts, and in ancient symbolism, especially in Hinduism. And that number is 108. And this is a very sacred number in Hinduism. 108 is a very sacred number in Hinduism. If you're a Hindu, you already know that this number appears over and over in your life. But if you come from another religion, in case you did not know about this, the use of the number 108 in Hinduism is just everywhere. Okay? So how many times should we chant a specific mantra? It's always 108. How many times should we circle around a shrine? It's always 108. And this can be somewhat frustrating as a child because we don't understand why this number is recommended in Hinduism so many times. The entire system appears to be designed around 108. And this is not limited to just religious stuff. Like everything Indian is designed around this 108. For example, there are 108 karanas or transitions in Indian classical dance. There are 108 musical meters or talas in Indian classical music. So you can see that it's not just limited to religion, but it appears a lot in ancient stories, in ancient texts as well. So if you ask a priest, how many attendants or ganas does Lord Shiva have? He just expects you to know that it's 108. If you ask the priest, how many sacred temples does Lord Vishnu have? He will just look at you and ask you, don't you know it is number 108? So And this can be very frustrating when you're a kid. When you're a kid growing up in India, growing up as a Hindu, this can be very frustrating because they don't tell you why this number 108 is so important. And I believe most people don't know why it's important. Now, if you ask mainstream experts, even mainstream religious experts, even the mainstream religious experts in Hinduism, if you ask, what's the obsession with the number 108 in ancient times, they will simply come up with a shallow answer. They will usually say, well, all religions were obsessed with some number, right? And so a random number was picked in Hinduism, and they assigned various things to this 108. Now, this is the typical explanation you will get, okay? But there are deeper meanings to this number. This is not a natural number, and the reason why 108 was used by ancient civilizations is no coincidence, because 108 is the basis of life itself. Now, I know that's a big statement, but 108 is the basis of life. Without 108, without this number, there would be no life at all. Now, what do I mean by this? Right? So, if you are a healthy adult, you will breathe 108 times 100, okay, during sunshine. So you will breathe 108 multiplied by 100 times. So 10800, so 10,800 times during sunshine, and you will breathe 108 times 100 during moonshine. So you will have 10,800 breaths during daytime, and you will have 10,800 breaths during nighttime. Now, this is mentioned in various, esoteric texts. Now, ancient texts tell you that actually they say this is the exact number of times that a human being will breathe if they're healthy. But is this a mere coincidence? Could this be a mere coincidence? Right? I'll tell you why ancient Hindus were obsessed with this. For example, we are talking about the sunshine and moonshine, right? So the basis of life comes from these two gods. On the right, there is this sun god Surya, and on the left, there is this moon or Chandra, right? So you can see, you immediately recognize what you see on the screen and say, why is Praveen Mohan explaining the sun and the moon like we don't know what it is, right? But this is a crazy image, okay? This is a crazy diagram. I'm showing the sun and the moon, and you do not see anything wrong with that, okay? But this is a crazy image, and only human beings can understand these figures as the sun and moon. If an alien was observing this image from the Mars, for example, he would be rolling on the floor laughing. You know why? Because the actual size of the moon would be like a dot, and the actual size of the sun would be like a big basketball. So technically, the sun and the moon should be shown like what you see on the right side of the screen. So the sun would be a very big ball, and the moon would appear as a dot if you look at them anywhere from outside the earth. But so this is actually how we should really show the sun and moon. Okay, so the sun should appear like this and the moon should appear as a dot. But why do we see them as the same size? Now, this is special only for Earth. No other planet has this. And we see them both as same-sized objects because of this number 108. And the sun is actually 400 times larger than the moon, okay? It is 400 times larger than the moon, but yet, have you ever observed a solar eclipse where there is the sun and then the moon comes in between and the moon completely fits the sun? It's almost like they're perfectly aligned, right? Because they seem to have the same size. Now, how is this possible? How is a moon, which is 400 times smaller than the sun, able to completely eclipse the sun, right? It's because of this number, 108. And this is why we see the Surya and the Chandra as almost two equal images, okay? Now, what do I mean by this, right? So what do I mean by 108? This is why, they appear the same size. So let's take a look at our solar system, and then let's take a look at a few of the things, right? So one is that there's a sun like this. Now, there's a sun in the very center, and you can see the Earth orbiting around the sun, all right? And you can see the moon orbiting the Earth. Realistically, this is how they should look. But from the Earth, they look the same. Why? So if you look at this, okay. Okay, so here's the sun and here's the Earth, right? So why do they look like this? Because the distance between the Earth and sun, and this distance between the Earth and sun divided by the diameter, okay, of the sun. If you create this ratio, that ratio is 108. So the distance between Earth to sun divided by the diameter of the sun would be 108. And you may say, well, that's fine, that could be a coincidence, right? No. Now, remember, we're talking about why the moon appears the same size as the sun. So it appears the same size because the distance between the Earth and the moon divided by the diameter of the moon is also 108. It also has that same ratio. So the distance between Earth and Sun divided by the diameter of the Sun is 108. And the distance between Earth and Moon and the diameter of the Moon is also 108. Okay? And this is why, and this is the reason why Surya and Chandra, or the Sun and the Moon, look very similar to us Earthlings. Okay? They're the same size to us because of this ratio. In reality, they should actually appear. I mean, we see this image again and again, not just in Hinduism, in ancient texts from other civilizations, in medieval texts, in alchemical texts, we can see the sun and moon being almost equal, right? Now, this is the reason why Surya and Chandra are similar gods, right? They're the same size to us. In reality, they should appear as a basketball and like a ping pong ball to us. Okay. Now again, this is the reason why we have 12 hours of sunshine and 12 hours of moonshine. Okay. Now remember, I was talking about the number of breaths taken by a human being, because of 12 hours of 10,800 breaths and 12 hours of 10,800 breaths during nighttime. And this is created, 12 hours each because of this ratio, because the ratios are equal, okay? Now, I just want you to know that if you come back, or if you're Googling and say, no, the current distance between the Earth and Sun divided by the diameter of the Sun is 109, right? Or if you say, oh, the distance between the moon and Earth divided by the diameter of the moon is 110. You would be right, okay? Because now think about this, right? This is an elliptical orbit. This is not a perfectly circular orbit, right? So the Earth has an elliptical orbit, and this number changes, it fluctuates. In some cases, it may be 107. In some cases, it may be 109. But if you look at the overall mean value, it would be 108. Okay, so you just have to, I would say, give me like a 2% error margin, okay? Because exact science is not exact science, right? So just give me a little bit of error margin, because understand that we're talking about a very long span of time. Okay, we're not talking about what's happening right now, but you also want to understand how the Earth would have revolved around the sun maybe a million years ago as well, and how the moon would have changed at that time. Okay, so now we have established, right? So now we have established. All right. So now we have established that 108 is an important number, right? It's maybe you think it's a freaky coincidence. If you're not a believer in God and all that stuff, you might think it's a freaky coincidence in nature. But this is the only reason why both these things appear the same. And this is why life exists on our planet. Okay? Otherwise, we would have to show it completely differently. Now, but why is this important, right? Why do they have to appear the same size? Now, the only reason life exists on Earth is because they are of the same size to us, because they are designed in a way that they appear the same size to us. Now, this is the only reason that life exists on planet Earth. Now, I know that's a big statement, right? But let me clarify that, okay? Is the sun really important for life? Now, I don't think we can argue this point much. I think that everybody would absolutely agree with me that the sun is very important for life to exist, okay? Without the sun, I mean, forget human beings and animals, even plants, most plants cannot exist. And then the sun has to be in this size, in this distance to us, in this ratio, which makes us, quote unquote, lucky enough that we're not too hot or too cold, okay? So this is absolutely important that sun is in this ratio, and it's the basis of life. And you may say, well, okay, yes, sun has to be at this particular distance for life to exist on our planet. But you may say, well, what about the moon, right? And that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Is the moon really important for life to exist? Now, what happens if the moon just vanishes one day? Would life no longer exist on our planet? Now, the moon is actually very, very important for life to exist. Okay. Now, take a look at this, right? So the moon takes about 28 days to go around the Earth. Okay, so this is called lunation. It's approximately 28 days. A healthy woman would have the exact reproductive cycle matching the moon's lunation. And this is not a coincidence. Again, if a woman gets pregnant, for example, she would deliver a baby after 28 into times 10, okay? So that lunation times 10. Now, this is called the gestation period, right? So the baby gets delivered after 280 days or 10 times the moon cycle. The time period, the gestation period is basically the time period for which any animal is pregnant and then delivers a baby, from the conception to delivery, right? So this is 10 times the lunation period for human beings, okay? And and you can say, well, we're talking about life itself, right? We're not just talking about humans, right? I was saying that 108 is a secret of life. I didn't say 108 is a secret of human life, right? So, but this is not just limited to humans, okay? So there's some very deep connection between the moon and all life. So if you just look at all domestic animals, for example, okay, for example, a cow, the gestation period is the exact same day as a human being. Actually, it's 280 days. And then, there are deeper implications about this, why the Hindus worship the cow, why we think the cow is sacred, and all that stuff. But the lunation period also affects basically all other animals, okay? It is very, the animals and plants are dependent on the moon. Now, dogs, for example, dogs and cats, it would be 28 days times 2, okay? So basically, their gestation period, the dog's gestation, the cat, is basically 56 days, okay? Now I know modern science will give you some random number, right? Right. So today, if you're a biologist, you'll say, "Oh no, the dog's gestation period is like 48 to 64 days, or something like that." But again, if you take the mean value, you will get 56 days. Okay. But again, according to ancient Hinduism, these are the numbers. The gestation period is very much connected to the moon's lunation, and these are still pretty accurate even today. Okay? So you can understand the connection between moon and reproduction. Now we know that without reproduction, no life can exist, and the moon is the basis of reproduction, right? So there is a reason why nightclubs are nightclubs, right? They won't work very well if they're open during daytime. It's because of the moon. And so without the moon, there is no reproduction possible. Well, it could be possible for a short period of time, but over a longer period of time, life would not exist without the moon. Now I know that the moon plays a very significant part in reproduction. And again, it's not just because we have a moon. It's because the moon is of a certain size to the Earth. And it's because it takes that 28 days. Now, is there scientific evidence to prove this, right? Now, scientists have actually tested animals, like marine worms, for example. And when they stopped exposing them to the moonlight, these marine worms, they just completely lost interest in mating. They wouldn't mate at all. They had no motivation to mate. So that entire species could just die if there's no moonlight. So there is actual evidence that without the moon, there's no life. Okay? And from my personal experience, I have seen the moon play an important role in human reproductive cycle because some sitters who are saints as well as doctors, there would be female patients who had problems with irregular menstrual cycles. And these sitters would prescribe that these women or girls should just sit under the moon on certain days. And it would regulate the moon or the moonlight or the moon's gravity or whatever it is, that moon would regulate their cycles back to 28 days. And so it's very interesting to understand. And I believe that we still have a long way to go in understanding why the moon affects the reproductive cycles and fertility, not only in human beings, but also in marine animals and in all animals, really. Because otherwise, you cannot have this kind of gestation period which follows the lunation period, and there's this moon going around the earth for 28 days. Now, let's look at the moon in a totally different angle. Now, we are looking at it in the perspective of how the moon affects reproduction and fertility, right? But let's look at it purely from a physical point of view and see why this 108 is important. Okay? Now, what would happen if the moon just suddenly disappears, right? So here you see the earth in the center and the moon is going around it, and I told you about this 108. Now, what happens if the moon suddenly disappears? Okay? Yes, we would, if you just wake up and the moon is suddenly gone, right? Humans would become lunatics. Okay, interesting choice of words there, because it says the word luna actually means moon. Okay, first of all, the human beings would go crazy if the moon is gone, but that's a completely different thing for you to look at. Okay, now if the moon completely vanishes, the earth has an axial tilt. Okay, so the earth is tilted at a certain angle, and this angle is the reason why we have all the seasons, and the moon controls this angle. Now remember that you know how you have a globe on your table, and the globe is always tilted. That's the axial tilt. Okay, if the moon disappeared one day, what would happen? The earth would stop rotating like this. Now, because it's tilted at that angle, right? Because it is tilted at this angle, and because of this angle, we have all these seasons, and the moon controls this axial tilt. And if the moon just disappears, the earth will not be like this. Actually, what will happen is that the earth will actually won't, instead of rotating at an angle, it'll start going like this at 90 degrees, or it'll start rotating like this, which is at 180 degrees. Now, how do we know this, right? Is this a weird theory? No, because planet Mercury and planet Venus have no moons at all. They don't have any moons at all. And one is almost at 0 degrees, right? So it's like rotating like this. And the other one is nearly at 180 degrees, right? Because they cannot have any axial tilt, okay? And the problem is, they don't have any seasons at all. So if the moon vanishes, the earth would start rotating on like sideways like this, or sideways like that, or like this. And you know what will happen is that the poles would become completely ice, and the equator would become completely desert. Okay? Now, not only that, if the earth moves sideways, you would have 6 months of daytime and 6 months of nighttime. Now, this is how 1 year would would look. So you would have 6 months of daytime and you would have 6 months of nighttime. And this is how important the moon is for us. And the moon has to be in this particular size and distance to make sure our planet has life. Okay. Now, what if the moon does not follow this, right? So, what if the moon? We're not talking if the moon exists or not, right? We're talking about if the what happens if the moon does not follow this ratio of 108. So now let's say it just moves a little bit closer to us, right? Maybe just 10%. Maybe the moon just comes a little bit closer to us, right? If you watch that movie, Bruce Almighty, in that movie, Jim Carrey just pulls the moon closer, right? What would happen in real life, right? Imagine you had the power to pull the moon closer to impress your girlfriend, right? So what would happen? Now remember, the moon affects the tides. Okay, if the moon just came 10% closer, there would be tsunamis everywhere. It will be a disaster. I know this works great on movies, right? But if the moon did not follow this 108, and if the moon just came 10% closer to us, the earth would completely have tsunamis all over, and the earth would be completely destroyed. Now, also, think about what it could do to the human body, right? So the human body has about 80% water, okay? So just think about it, right? If the moon comes really closer to us, very close to us, think about what would happen to the water in our bodies, right? Well, the effect could be devastating, okay? But you can say, Praveen, what if the moon did not come closer, but instead got pushed further away, right? So we don't have to follow this 108 ratio. Maybe coming closer is not a good idea. But what happens if the moon just went a little bit further out, right? What would happen? So I told you if the moon comes closer, we get tsunamis destroying the planet. But if the moon just deviated and if it just went 10% further out, you know what would happen? The earth would start to wobble and spin out of control. Okay, so the earth would wobble like a top because remember, the moon controls the axial tilt. Okay, so the moon is controlling the axial tilt. So if the moon is gone, the earth would just wobble like this and this. Okay, so this is what's going to happen. And then you know what happens next? The polar ice, the ice from the poles would drift to the equator and destroy everything. The ice from the poles would just drift to the equator, completely destroying the planet. Now, and this is exactly what happened in planet Mars. Okay, Mars still has two moons. Well, think about it, right? So if you lived in Mars, it would be pretty cool because you would have two moons. Now the problem is that these moons of the Mars, they're not following this 108 ratio. These are smaller, or the other way to say this is they're a little bit further out from the planet. And because of this distance, they're not able to regulate the axial tilt of Mars. The moons of Mars are not good enough because they're not following this ratio. So they're not able to regulate this axial tilt. So the Mars wobbles so much that it did happen. The ice actually drifted from the poles to the equator, destroying Mars. Okay. Now, so this is why the moon has to follow the 108 ratio, and the sun, it should be a very simple argument because it's very simple to understand that the sun has to be at a certain size, at a certain distance, to make sure. Well, I mean, think about it, right? So if the sun came 10% closer to us, we'd probably not survive, right? So we'd just be too hot, not just for us, for almost all animals. Maybe all the water gets evaporated, all the plants die. Maybe we just all burn. Yeah. And what happens if the sun moves a little bit further away, right? So the opposite happens, right? And you can see this depiction here. By the way, guys, those are all these images and that I'm showing you are created using AI. Okay, as you know, we're still at the very nascent stage of AI. So if there are some mistakes in the images, I apologize, but I need you to know that these images are completely created by AI. Right? If there's a formula, if there's some depiction that's wrong, if there's a spelling mistake, well, let's just blame it on AI, okay? Now, so you can see if the sun really goes far away, the opposite happen, right? So the opposite is going to happen because we're gonna feel like we're in a freezer, and mostly we all perish anyway. So there is no life, not just human life. There is no life. All life gets destroyed if this 108 is violated. Now, this is why 108 is so important in Hinduism. Now, if you go deep into the hills of Sadhuragiri, we can see, I've seen it, Siddhars worship a strange lingam. And this lingam has 5 facets, okay? It has 5 sides. Actually, this is again generated with AI, okay? We're not allowed to photograph the lingams and so on and so forth. But the people don't even know where this lingam is, and it's very inaccessible. But I'm just showing you an AI model of the 5-faceted lingam, and this is how you would see it, right? So it just kind of looks like that. But if you go to the top, okay, you would see it like this, right? Because it has 5 facets, right? So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is called Panchalingam, actually. Sometimes in other places I've seen a Panchamukha Lingam, but this is just called a Panja Lingam there. And the beauty of this is the angle between any 2 sides, okay, would be 108. And this is considered a very sacred, rare lingam, okay? And of course, on my YouTube channel, if you go to my YouTube channel, if you just search for my name, Praveen Mohan, you can see a lot of lingams. I've probably put maybe 100 different types of ancient lingams on my videos, right? I've even shown ancient lingams with 16 sides. But these Panjalingams or 5-faceted lingams are actually quite rare, okay? Like this, they have a top view that look like this, and you have a side view like this, okay? So this is a very, very sacred lingam with special powers, right? So, and the angle between them is 108. Now, again, all pentagons, okay, all pentagons will have 108 degrees between 2 sides, right? Now, is this why the pentagon in the US is designed like this? Because of 108? Is this somehow related to aliens and UFOs and extraterrestrial connection? We're not going to go into the depths of those things, okay? But yeah, if you create a pentagon, it's going to have 108 degrees between any two sides. Now, let's look at the significance of the number 108 in mathematics, okay? So 108 is actually 1 raised to the power of 1 multiplied by 2 to the power of 2 multiplied by 3 raised to the power of 3. Okay? So it would be 1 to the power 1 multiplied by 2 to the power 2 multiplied by 3 to the power 3. Now you can tell right away that's 108. Okay, so right away, these are not just coincidences. And this is a divine number. Okay, so this is a divine number. This is the number that designs everything. Now, if you don't, again, if you're a firm believer in God, you automatically understand that why we worship 108 and what's the connection between the number 108 and God and how it's the basis of all life. But even if you are an atheist or an agnostic, you can just believe that nature has chosen this number, right? 108 as the basis of all life. Now, and another number is the golden ratio, right? That again, you can see the golden ratio and the Fibonacci series appear again and again in nature, right? Is there a connection between golden ratio and the number 108? Yes. So the connection is that 2 sine 108 degrees divided by 2. That would be the golden ratio. Okay, so 2 sine 108 divided by 2 would give you the golden ratio. So you see how 108 is connected to the sun, the moon, the golden ratio, and how how it's being formed. Now, the most important thing that I would like to see, because what I do most of the times is that we are exploring ancient Hindu temples. We do a lot of research in Thailand. We have been working on the ancient temples of Thailand because I assume that most of you know about Thailand, but most people know of it as a place where you go for the beaches or the clubs or street food or something like that. But Thailand has some of the most amazing ancient temples, and we can see this number 108 appear in these temples. Okay, now not just limited to Thailand. But we can also see this being used in ancient Hindu and Buddhist temples in India and in Cambodia. Okay. Today, archaeologists and historians are not looking into this aspect because they just think 108 is a random number. Okay. But most ancient Hindu and Buddhist temples use 108 in their architecture. Okay, so they just use that 108 in many places. Now, for example, this temple right in Tanjore, this is the Brihadishwara temple in Tanjore. That's 216 feet tall. That's 108 times 2. Okay, so that's 216 feet tall. So you can see, while they were building a massive temple, this is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, right? And this was built at least 1,000 years ago, right? This was built at least 1,000 years ago. And you can see how they've incorporated that number into this temple. But there's another temple, okay? This is the Kokor Pyramid in Cambodia, okay? Of course, on top of the Kokor, this is what you would think that, this is a pyramid, right? What were the Hindus doing, building a pyramid in Cambodia? But yes, we do have a lot of Hindu pyramids in Cambodia, and I'll show you another pyramid in Thailand as well. And on top of this Kokor lingam, there used to be on top of this Kokor pyramid, there used to be a lingam, and the total height used to be 108 feet. Now, of course, today the lingam is destroyed, but original height of the entire pyramid, including the lingam, was 108 feet. Okay. So, you can see all ancient structures, right? So were designed around this sacred number. Now, how was this? How was this design? Now, think about what are the odds that all these ratios, right? What are the odds that all these ratios are aligned together? Okay, and is this what are the odds that the ratio between the sun, the moon, and all these numbers have to be aligned naturally? And how is it connected to the golden ratio? And again, can this all be a mere coincidence? Right? And again, we can see this sacred number. We're still doing research in Thailand. We do a lot of tours in Thailand. Actually, we have another tour coming up next month in November, and we do tours in Thailand. And we can see that again in this is a pyramid in Thailand, right? And you can see it's very similar to the Mesoamerican pyramids. And again, you can see this number being employed in the sacred temples and pyramids of Thailand. Okay, so I hope you guys can see this as a video. And yeah, we do climb these pyramids, and we do a lot of research in this particular angle to see, was 108 incorporated in creating these structures, not just in temples or pyramids, but this is the Dharma Chakra, by the way. This is in the Sitak pyramid. Okay, so you can see that they used this in the sacred numbers again. In this, that's AI, guys, by the way. All right, so I believe we have come to the end of the presentation. So I hope you got a kind of a comprehensive idea about why 108 is being used this way. I hope you realize that this is not a random number that was just randomly picked, and you can understand the deeper significances of this. And if you visit ancient temples, okay, I know we're doing this in Switzerland, and I'm lucky to be in India because we have all these ancient temples, and we keep going to Thailand and Cambodia to study these temples. So if you get a chance to visit ancient sites, if you get a chance to visit ancient temples, please do pay attention to this number and see if this number was being used anywhere. Okay? All right. Thank you for listening, and thank you for this opportunity, guys. I'm going to stop the presentation.
Praveen Mohan, thank you so much for your nice presentation. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for this wonderful presentation and explaining the significance of 108 and taking us through this all the AI tour to the temples and everywhere. So I'd like to quickly ask the audience if they have quick questions One or two we can take if there are. Otherwise, I give you 5 seconds to formulate your question. Yes, we have one. Please. Here.
Good morning or good afternoon. I want to know if is it possible we made a planning to build an ancient temple in Switzerland. You think it will be realistic with with this number of 108 if we follow the paradigm of this number, or it is not possible?
Okay, I'm sorry, but somebody has to repeat that question, okay, because the audio was very low.
Can I? Yeah. So the question was, is it possible to build a similar temple with all these 108 parameter and tuning? Is it possible to do this in somewhere like Switzerland? That was the question.
Yes. Yes, it's absolutely possible. Because we have studied hundreds of ancient temples, we know that they've been how these structures are constructed. At least partially, we have a partial understanding of how they created these structures. We can definitely incorporate this sacred number into the newer temples that we're building. And yes, we could absolutely build an ancient temple in Switzerland using these sacred numbers and sacred geometry, yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Due to time constraint, I think we'll not do further Q&A. But if there are more questions, I would be happy to communicate them to you and then forward them to you. Thank you so much for joining us. We would also have a memento for you, but unfortunately you're not present here. So please give a big round of applause for the speaker. Thank you so much for taking us through this journey.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.